schedules things doesn't look at our calendar.
He's very important, and he likes to remind me I am not. Nobody knows me. Nobody cares, Reagan.
Does he know what a calendar is? I guess we should start there. Do you know what a calendar is?
I do have it. I have multiple calendars. The problem is keeping my calendar and all my candidates' calendars and then my senator's calendar. And then I got to look at my wife's calendar, Reagan.
Boo-hoo.
I thought I was one of his candidates, but apparently I am not.
Boo-hoo. Yeah,
you don't have a primary opponent. If you did, then you would be. Right now, you're
I wind up with another one. I get one every year. Stop it.
Great. We raise more money.
He's taking it for granted, I feel like. I don't know.
You had two opponents last cycle, and you beat them both 90-10.
Listen, I want this part deleted because I want to make sure that I am properly taken care of for my tough campaign.
No, we're leaving this in.
We have a secret plan if we need to deploy it. That's what it is. We aren't going to deploy. We aren't going to spend $250,000 in the primary for no reason. Okay, so here's the thing, though. And speaking of calendars, people who haven't looked at a calendar is the people who put together the short session schedule when we adopted the calendar for that, or for the we had a ballot measure, right? Way back in like 08, 09 or whatever, when they added short session and limited long session, which the top line is good. You used to just go unlimited. Session could be as long as you wanted it to be or as short as you wanted it to be. And it was never short. It was always too long. So limits was good. But these guys needed to look at a calendar and realize that we go from short session sine die to filing deadline to 1 week later voters pamphlet deadlines. No, that's the work. 2 days after filing?
2 days after filing, a Thursday at 5:00.
Thursday at 5:00. Do not submit your voters pamphlet at 11:59, people. That is a mistake that has been made by many people, many people, and causes many panicking caucus leaders and consultants and campaign managers and candidates. That's the worst schedule of all time. Friday sine die, Tuesday filing deadline, Thursday voters pamphlet. Worst week in history is that week. We need to break that up just a smidge.
Thanks for reminding me what week I'm going into. So appreciate that, Ray.
Yeah, I wish there was somebody around that could help you with that stuff, but I can't find anybody. There's nobody.
Yeah. They're all on vacation. Apparently, some people just leave when the session's over, but not I, and not Vicky, because Representative Breese Iverson is joining us today. Yay! I've seen a lot of after session kind of report. There was a bunch of stuff that happened in short session. And you look at years past of short sessions, we tackled Measure 110 a couple of years ago, and that was like the biggest thing. And then there was like a bunch of little stuff, right? But no, like the gross amount of big things that we tackled in this short session was off the charts. And none, I don't think, being bigger for rural Oregon and rural family farms than the farm store bill 4153, which ultimately passed pretty easily out of the House and pretty easily out of the Senate with a few courtesy no's, as I'd like to call them. People like to give courtesy yeses, but I feel there was more courtesy no's because they were so afraid of, the banana people. So, I think that was really where those courtesy no's came from. But I would love to hear your take on it, Representative, and kind of like what you think really got this bill to the finish line and why it's kind of so important for our farms.
Well, first and foremost, I just think it's pretty cute that you called all of it easy. There was nothing easy in this.
It was easy for him. Easy for him.
Yeah.
It wound up being a really much larger conversation throughout the session than it should have been, given the fact that we started this bill last session. And in the conversations last session, we didn't get the bill across the finish line because the agency came to the table and the stakeholders came to the table and they said, oh, we can do this in rulemaking and we don't need to have this bill. And if we just take a quick glimpse backwards, we realize that the agency couldn't have messed up their rulemaking bigger than they did so badly that even the governor came in and put in an executive order to stop the rulemaking because it was so backwards from intent. And from that moment forward, then you had stakeholders that were having the conversation and talking about what needed to happen. And I think that what we wound up with this session was probably one of the better pieces of legislation that really had input from all sides. And I know there were claims that we didn't take input from all the stakeholders, and the Friends of Family Farms suggested that we didn't take any of their language, but in fact we did, and that is how we wound up with the -3s in the middle of sessions.
Oh, I thought I muted you.
You muted in the middle of a sentence.
If you expect me to go back and get that all again, you are.
Here's the thing. I've meant to change my name at the beginning because Brian and I are both logged in the same Zoom account. So we both say Brian. So he went to mute Brian, and he did mute Brian. He muted himself.
No, I just barely muted it. So
baby,
I think Senator Girard had it right in Ways and Means and called this the best bill of session.
I adore Senator Girard for all of his comments on that, and you are 100% correct. He did call it the best bill of the session, and
he did agree.
Personally, I think it was.
Well, everybody who passes a bill calls their bill the best bill of session, so I think that's
Yeah, but I think this one was really important. And what people don't understand with what this farm stores bill really did was it codified what we already enjoy in and on the farms, which is the ability to have pumpkin patches and the Wooden Shoe Tulip Festival and some of those other big opportunities in communities. You know, if we didn't pass this bill, the counties were going to be forced to shut some of those ongoing operations down. And people don't realize that domino effect of what was about to happen.
I really think that one of the things that I was so impressed with your bill and you and Reagan working this bill and is the team you built around this bill. And I don't think people realize what it takes to pass a bill that is even remotely controversial on any level and the amount of teamwork that it takes to pull it together. So, Reagan, I don't know if you have any thoughts, because I know you know more about farm stores than you ever knew before going into the session. I mean, you were like section by section, the amount of meetings you had with people, like literally line, 4, 12, whatever, was it just pretty insane, your knowledge of the bill. But maybe you could just touch on like, who were the partners that really kind of pulled this one together?
Well, I think it really starts with the idea, right? And if the idea, anybody can have an idea, but if you have an idea that's grounded in what's the reality on the ground for farm stands and what are they wanting to accomplish that they can't do right now, and then what's the reality on the ground in terms of enforcement by the counties, right? And how they're dealing with their neighbors, right? If you have a farm store, are they good neighbors and all that kind of stuff? And that really started with OPOA, the Oregon Property Owners Association, and Samantha Bear and Dave Honeycutt. They have a really good, deep knowledge, both of Oregon's land use system, which is super critical. If you don't understand land use, then this bill is going to be a challenge for you. And I think a lot of the opposition from this bill really was based in not understanding the land use system. And I would encourage folks who say they care about the land use system to get in and understand it. Because when you do that, you realize how it's not just designed. The idea and the goals are great, but the implementation on the ground can really be challenging for the things we say we're trying to protect, farmers and farmland and the rural way of life and all those things. So get in and understand those things. Sam and Dave do. And then adding with that, right, Jody Hack, who's their contract lobbyist. And she has a lot of knowledge and relationships and history in the building that was super critical for us in terms of who to meet with and who to talk to about various issues and who we could get and how we would be able to persuade folks to vote for this thing. And then also the Associated Oregon Counties, or I think they're Association of Oregon Counties. I think I keep getting that wrong. And so I apologize to them. And Brandon Persinger, who also has worked for legislators and has also worked for the caucus. And so he had a really deep background that was there. And then Ryan Crable with our main contact with Farm Bureau, and having Farm Bureau on board was super important. They were not supportive of the previous bill, and we were able to work with them, and they were willing to work with us. And so everybody kind of gave and took a little, and that I think is what it takes. And that's really what this is at the end of the day. To win elections, to pass bills, it's a coalition building effort. And we built a great coalition together with Representative Breese, Iverson, leading and with great support also from the agencies. And I think that goes undersold a little bit without support of the agencies. And I said this throughout the whole process. I was like, wow, is this what it's like when the governor's office is with you instead of against you? Like that, it's night and day difference in terms of being able to work with that. So when agencies don't want to do stuff, they have all kinds of tricks they can pull out of their hat. And as Republicans, we're used to experiencing those big fiscals and all this stuff that is sort of those sometimes can be real, but sometimes those are a little bit not as real as they want you to believe. And we were able to work directly with the agencies. We gathered their feedback early. That's super important. So really thankful for DLCD, Department of Ag, Jeff Huntington and Bob Livingston and all those folks working for the governor. And of course, the governor herself. Without her being bought in on the concept, we don't get that help and a collaboration with the agencies. So all in all, a really good team, a team that was willing to meet and did meet multiple times with the opposition. And I would say the biggest mistake that they made was not taking us seriously. I don't think they took us seriously early on in the process. And because they didn't, I think they missed out on opportunities to provide, feedback, more feedback. And so when they come to the game very late, and short sessions, a very compressed timeline. So when you bring a big gut and stuff amendment to the work session and you weren't anywhere near the public hearings with your feedback, I think that's where, stuff starts to get dropped. And they had opportunities and did deliver some feedback, which we incorporated. And I think that feedback ultimately really did actually make the bill better. So I would say this was one where the process was really, really good. Don't be afraid of the legislative process. Use it, take advantage of it. And at the end of the day, you can really get a good outcome. And I think 4153A technically, because we did amend it one time. The farm store bill really is a great product because of all of that work and collaboration and opposition. I think all of that stuff made it better.
I agree. It's a great bill. I think we learned a couple of things during the carry of this bill while it was going through the session. And one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and this is process piece versus just the credibility of the language of the bill. But the process piece that we learned is, when we got on the House floor and the Senate floor and we started listening to the back and forth, which, by the way, I think the Senate might have had the longest carry of this bill with like an hour and a half or something. The reality is that, the people that opposed the bill would get up and say thousands of people came out in protest for the bill or in opposition of the bill. But when you look back at the process, those folks showed up at the beginning of the bill, and that opposition wasn't necessarily for the what you just referenced, Reagan, which is the A engrossed version of the bill, which is where we adopted a dash amendment. And that dash amendment did have some good substantive changes in it that made the bill better. So it's some of it's process in this in the legislature and really paying attention to what is the piece that's at play at the moment and making sure that we're talking to the right piece of legislation. Further, I'm just going to send some kudos across the aisle. I was pleasantly surprised by the engagement from some of my Democrat colleagues in this bill and what they acknowledged when we go into pieces of legislation that look real partisan, you just hit the rhetoric on either side. And what I experienced out of this particular bill was the engagement from the Democrats that understood what it was we were talking about and how the people that were opposing it just came up with the same comments again and again and again. And they weren't real in that land use conversation, which you kind of spoke to, Reagan. Land use in Oregon is really complicated. Senate Bill 100 from 1973 set a space that we've been trying to weave our way through ever since. And to go back and really understand what they put in play in 73 and how the layers have affect us today, that's why we're here. It's why we had to have this bill this session. It's why, ag diversifies because we have to with society. With whatever the market's demanding, we have to diversify our operations to meet what the society wants from us today. But the land use laws don't diversify with us. And when that happens, it puts some weird kinks in the system, and it causes Oregon agriculture to be behind other states. And this bill brought us forward just a little bit. And I'm super excited about that.
No, it was good. And I think you're right about the Democrats' side of it, because this bill, you really had to weave to make it not become a partisan bill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This one for the left, this one for the right. And it's really, you have to kind of manage that process. And that's really hard to do, especially in a short session. Sometimes easier to do in a short session because there's not enough time for the opposition to just basically try to kill your bill. So, once it's going on the tracks, but you got to keep it going, because there's a few bills that fell off the tracks that people were like, hey, what happened to that bill? And you're like, gone.
Well, I think the difference is
estate tax. What happened to that one? Just kind of disappeared.
But I think that the difference is that this bill has been, it was perfect for short session because the conversation started so long ago. It wasn't like we took a brand new, really big, complex conversation and shoved it into 35 days. This has been going on for a year and a half.
Yeah, true.
We've been at the table. So, but to your point, I think short session was the right place to get it through, because if a bill goes too long in any one session, it loses some momentum and it's hard to pick it back up and get it moving again.
Yeah.
Hence the reason we should just not have 6-month sessions, in my opinion.
Hey, Reagan and I, we've been on board the train of 200-day sessions or 290-day sessions for a while. So I think it'd be great to have a little bit more time, but not too much time.
Yeah, I think it would be a definite shift in our budget conversations, because there's, the long sessions are really intended to go after and dig into the agency budgets. So we'd have to really look at that and figure that piece out. But whole in 2 shorter sessions would make way more sense for Oregon.
Well, good job on the farm stand bill. I've been critical of Farm Bureau in the past on the podcast, but I got to say Ryan and really came to play on this one, and he should take a lot of kudos, and the Farm Bureau for stepping up, probably in the face of even their own board, some of their own board members that are kind of not for allowing farmers to make more money, which is still always this doesn't make any sense to me.
They really are diversified in that board.
Yeah, it's but you have to realize that at the end of the day, our job, even remember when we were doing the whole hemp stuff with Farm Bureau, there's a lot of challenges around that, and it was really because it has to come down to, can a farmer grow something or sell something that helps them stay in business? At the end of the day, if you really break down why does a Farm Bureau even exist, you have to go to that core reason of why you're an association, and I think even the Ranchers Association, right? The cattle ranchers had to have that kind of come to Jesus discussion with the wolf funding to say, because they're kind of against more taxes.
Yes,
but you have to have dedicated funding for their wolf, project, or it's just going to die. So, I mean, granted, we'd rather just shoot wolves. Don't get me wrong, but I think.
Well, I think it goes back. You have to diversify with the times, and if I've always been an advocate that Oregon was built out of ag. The foundation of the roots of Oregon, they're very firmly set and have grown out of agriculture. We are one of the most diverse states for the different sectors of ag that we produce. And I think this, what you're talking about with Farm Bureau it's an example of that, because they have the big farmers that have grown or have larger plots of land that are diverse in what they might grow. But then we've also got the smaller farmers that, they're still working their 20 acres to 80 acres. And you know what? Sometimes you can make that work. And if you've got Christmas trees on that, you don't need as much land. But as we've experienced, honey, if we've got cows, we need lots of land, and cows that can move really fast with really wide mouths to find the forage. The difference is real, and we need to. We can't have statutes and county ordinances that are so cookie cutter that people can't diversify underneath of that. That's the biggest consideration for Oregon ag. We've got to have diversification.
That's the thing about this short session that I really appreciated. And I feel like, Brian, that's why we got a lot of that stuff done that you were talking about. All of these kind of, not the biggest issues, but all these medium-sized problems that have gone 2 or 3 sessions and haven't been solved, is we finally got to a place. And I think for different legislators, it was for different reasons. But at the end of the day, we got to a place where everyone's like, okay, yes, we all have this idea in our minds of what's the ideal Oregon that we picture, that we want. But at the end of the day, when you're writing a bill and when you're voting, you have to look at what's reality on the ground. What do things look like today? And let's deal with reality. All the way from wolf funding to rec liability to all that stuff. People were like, the reality is this stuff is broken. And yes, I heard all the Republicans, and a lot of them voted no just because of the funding disparity between rural and urban. But at the end of the day, there also had to be wolf funding, and there were a lot of Republicans that weren't going to stand in the way of getting that wolf funding done, even if the avenue wasn't ideal. Same thing with Democrats on rec liability, where they're like, well, it would be great if we could allow the trial lawyers to sue anybody, anytime, anywhere for anything. But we can't do that because then a lot of folks can't operate. So what's the best that we can do to try to solve this problem? And that's what they did. And so you have this space.
Operate, Reagan, but it's also, think about Oregonians that like Oregon because they like to be outside and they like to go do things. Yep. And that rec liability issue, it doesn't just keep the operators from operating, but it keeps people from getting out on the ground and enjoying the ground, the hiking, the camping, all the things, because once the first lawsuit goes out, all those campgrounds shut down. All the ability to get out and go for a hike shuts down. And I just don't think people really understood what that overarching and domino effect was going to be for Oregon.
And then we start losing our dominance as a tourism state, and then our wolf funding goes to zero and our cows are gone because the wolves just come and eat our cows.
What a cycle.
So no, it was a good all in all, I think you're right. Actually, there was a lot of medium-sized legislation, that the stuff that kind of had a good group of people working on it, that stuff all kind of just went through, and the stuff that was controversial just kind of fell off. And really, I think at the end of the day, the only thing that probably was political was just the gas tax.
I don't know. I think you called them medium-sized issues, and Reagan, I appreciate that. But the reality is they're medium-sized issues because, again, none of them were brand new. We've been working on them for one or two legislative cycles, and probably, if we're real about the way the process works, once you introduce something, and I was. You guys will be proud of me. I was listening to your podcast the other day, and I was listening to Rep. Evans go on about his legislation and how he starts, 500 bills so that he can test the temperature of the conversation, basically, to figure out which subject's going to move forward. But it kind of brings me back to what we're talking about right now, which is you get these, quote, medium-sized pieces of legislation, and it's not that it's a medium-sized issue. It's a big issue, but it feels medium-sized because we started it 2 sessions ago, and we've been ferreting out all of the extreme sides, and we've got it boiled down to a core piece of legislation that makes sense for Oregon. And that's when I think Oregonians win.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Reagan and I think we single-handedly helped pass Rep. Evans that bill. I think because of the pod.
Of course.
Many people are saying. It wasn't scheduled before the episode, and then after the episode, it was scheduled.
I'm kind of with Reagan on this one. I feel like
make me laugh.
We say causation, other people say correlation. No one's to know.
No one's to know. Yeah.
You guys take it and own it. Take the big.
Yeah, we will take it and own it because we don't take much, or get much, so we'll take what we can.
I think that's also why farm stores felt huge, is because it's just hard to pass a bill. And you were talking about working with Democrats. That's a requirement, actually. You're required to get Democratic votes. And usually it can't just be a handful. You can't have all the Republicans and a handful of Democrats. Usually there has to be some level of critical mass of Democrats either supporting your bill or who under their breath are resigned to the fact that it does need to pass, even if they hate it very much. And, if there was a balance to be struck on each of these issues with that. So I think we'll talk more about kind of these issues and sort of unpack short session as we go along. We're going to have Sam and Dave on to really get into the details on farm stores. We're going to, I've gotten text, Brian, I don't know if you have, about rec liability and that stuff. So we might be able to unpack that at some point. I don't know what you guys did in the Senate. I'm not sure. The House was really working on a lot of stuff and accomplishing a lot. The Senate was taking forever to do stuff, Brian. So you guys are a little slow. I don't know if you guys got as much done as
until
we got
the end.
Done.
We were done waiting for the House to open their doors.
Oh, brother, you waited an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty interesting how it ended. I was actually happy that it ended at 4:30 on a Friday. Like, I don't know how many times we're there until freaking 10 or 11 o'clock at night. The long session was 11:45. I mean, that was insane waiting for paperwork. So it was like it ended slow and then it ended all of a sudden. It was a very interesting day on Friday, but
The best part of the end of the session was, and I was just the old school side of me, I was so excited when both chamber doors opened and it wasn't waving across the rotunda at each other, but just like in the old days, and quote, old days was only 6 short years ago, but that Capitol's been closed down for so long between COVID and then the remodel. This was the first time in at least 5 years that as both Senate chamber and the House chamber sine died, the doors opened and the members came down the steps and met down at the rotunda, shook hands, hugged, were excited about the things we got done. That was so rewarding to my soul. It was fabulous.
I think the open Capitol actually made this a better session, having all that space,
100%,
getting that brought it back. Because, before, like you said, there was all this junk in the middle and, we kind of opened the doors and we'd wave and then snipe at each other. That was the session in 25 and 23. A lot of that was just interchamber and cross party fighting. And I think that having all those spaces, having the lounge reopen for legislators to go in and be like, hey, have you heard about my bill? It's actually in your committee. Or, hey, this is coming to you. Would you take a look at it? Those conversations, there was space for all that stuff to breathe. There was time and opportunity for people to just get together. And that space was what I think led to what I felt like. And what I was telling people was the very last day of session had, a very good, what they call vibes, what the kids call vibes, right? There was just good vibes. And that, I think, propelled a lot of stuff that could have been big battles right there on the final day. And we've had short sessions that have ended and long sessions that have ended on bad notes. And this one ended on, I think, for most people, very positive notes. And I think that helped not just farm stores, but a lot of stuff just really push over the finish line. And if it were in a negative environment, it, might have been much closer or some of that stuff could have died. And I think that that's something you can't control. You don't know what your last day of session is like, which is why everyone tries to avoid having their stuff stuck to the last day.
I agree. Well, we should let the representative go so she can go do some work.
No, I'm taking too much of your life.
Get busy. Jeez, rude.
Thank you guys for letting me come and pontificate on farm stores. I'm excited to go to the pumpkin patch this coming fall. I hope you guys will enjoy the Tulip Festival and all the fun things that get to continue because of that bill.
We will. Thank you. Hey, Reagan, before we go, I think I want to kind of just touch on what I sent you this morning on the DHM polling and because I think there's some interesting stuff on where the state may be moving with what we care about, because I think this will be as we get into campaigns. And of course, this is Monday, March 9th, so we'll wait to do our primary preview, the big primary preview show. We'll wait to do that until after filing deadline, because I would imagine there's going to be things changing. But I thought, unless you had anything else, I was just going to touch on this deal with DHM, good friend of the pod, obviously. So, but they do a blog, and they did a year ago where they said that what's your number one issue? It's like 43% homelessness and 21% compared to 21% today. So that's really cut in half. And I think, and then housing affordability was up there, and drugs and mental health, everything was like drugs and housing affordability and homelessness like a year ago in 25. So now homelessness is still there, but what's really moved up is housing affordability has gone off the cliff. And what's really moved up is poor leadership, taxes and tariffs, and Democrats. And Tina Kotek. I really found it very interesting that leadership and everything is really in liberalism this kind of moved up. So I'm not sure if Donald Trump will unravel all of this for us with the Iranian war and everything going on. But it really feels like the lack of leadership in the state and just the poor attention to, details and making things happen is really kind of starting to bubble up into people's minds. Like they're kind of just getting pissed at the status quo. That's what I kind of take away from where the issues are moving in my mind. And I think also a lot of people are just getting used to seeing shit on the streets in Portland. That's the other thing with the homeless stuff.
I would say, and so the question is, what do you think is the most important problem facing Oregon today? So that is how it's phrased. And in 2025, it was 43% homelessness and 16% housing affordability. Those two just dominated. And then he has highlighted here now in 2026, housing affordability has dropped to 8%. So 50% drop in that being people's top issue. And I don't think that's because we just went out there and solved it. I don't think housing is affordable. I think it's just other stuff has now kind of taken its place, right? Homelessness has also dropped by half. And like you said, poor leadership / government management is the first one. And I think that both parties are going to approach that differently, right? Republicans are going to say, hey, look at the Democrats who've run this state for 10 years plus, with super majorities and that kind of stuff and majorities, and 30 years in the administrative state, the governor's office, right? Or I think there might be 4 years now, right? And Democrats are going to say, wow, look at these Republicans and this federal government they're running, and it's, chaotic and out of control and all that stuff, right? Then you have an interesting one, which is taxes and tariffs. And again, Democrats are going to focus on tariffs. Republicans are going to focus on taxes, right? And so you have this yin and yang here. Most people, I would guess, don't see all these issues the same way. And that's the thing with polling. When you look at this stuff, everyone goes, oh, everyone agrees we need lower taxes, right? And I was like, well, taxes / tariffs is probably about half Republicans, half Democrats, and they care about different stuff. So you can't just assume that everyone agrees with you when you look at these. And I think a lot of people who maybe either haven't spent a lot of time in politics or have a simple view or easy seat, they think all these things are people agree with them. Well, you have to kind of parse down into the crosstabs. So anyway, we'll want to look at the crosstabs here and have John on to talk more about this. And then that 12% Democrats, Tina Kotek, too liberal. So you have 12% who are definitely on our side and are probably already with us. And I'm glad that they're paying attention and bringing those issues to the forefront. But then it is, can we capitalize? And then 10% cost of living. And again, Republicans are going to focus on cost of government. Democrats are going to focus on, the harm they say Republicans have done to the economy. So it'll be really interesting to see how these play out. This issue set doesn't look too bad for us, though, Brian. I would say if these are the top issues, I would be okay and ready to campaign and put taxes and government mismanagement and Democrats and homelessness at the top of the list. I think those work for us here in Oregon. They don't necessarily work if you go to the federal level as well for Republicans, but state level, I like this issue set.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm liking where we have to keep. Usually, international affairs don't usually, flow into state politics, so we don't necessarily have to worry about wars and stuff unless it escalates, right? I mean, that could be a big problem for us, but I think we're probably good there. But to see that the escalation of that issue of caring about leadership and liberalism now, and just I think what we missed the boat on, and we can talk about more about this later when we talk about campaigning, but I think one of the issues that we really missed the boat on was the immigration issue. I think most Oregonians are on our side in regards to getting illegal aliens out of our country. Especially the criminals, and especially the ones that, are basically just here in America taking a free ride, getting free healthcare and free lunch and free everything, and they're not really contributing to society. And I think that we're kind of missing that issue as a really strong wedge issue between us and Democrats. And maybe we'll see that change, but more to come as we talk about campaign stuff. That's for sure.
It's going to be a fun campaign season, Brian, and looking forward to breaking down the candidates. And originally I was going to go to filing day, but turns out that we have a appointment for a certain dog related operation on Tuesday. And so I won't be there, but I'll be with you in spirit, and we will certainly break down any filing day surprises and other related news as we go forward.
That should be fun. All right. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
these marble halls today. Got a bill, I wanna make it sway. People talking left and right, but we're gonna do this thing tonight. Oh, yeah. Time to make a move, can't afford to lose. Got the votes to prove what we're gonna do. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. La, 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 yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. Representatives and senators meet, trading words to find the perfect beat. Committee hearings all day long, till we finally sing the same song. Oh, yeah. Amendments flying high, watch them pass on by. Gotta give and try, make this bill fly. We're dancing back